Have you ever felt that the stories you were taught in Sunday school might be missing something, or wondered if the Bible's creation narrative is more complex than it seems? In this video, we are about to uncover hidden layers in the Genesis stories, reveal why there are actually two different creation accounts side by side, and explore how these stories connect to ancient mythologies like the Enuma Elish and the Sumerian Anunnaki. We'll question the traditional portrayal of the Garden of Eden, consider what role Lilith might have played before Eve arrived, and even dive into mysterious Kabbalistic teachings that suggest our universe may not be the first attempt at creation. Stay with us until the end to gain a whole new perspective on these ancient texts and to understand how this knowledge can reshape your view of humanity's origins. After watching, you'll see the Bible's opening chapters not as a simple, one-size-fits-all story, but as a complex tapestry woven from many ancient threads. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss more deep explorations like this one. Hey, all right, let's get straight to it. The Bible begins with, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," right? But here's the kicker. The book of Genesis actually contains two very different creation stories. That's right, two. And they don't exactly line up. If you've ever been told there's only one official creation story in the Bible, you've been sold a half-truth. In Genesis 1, you get this big cosmic version. God creates everything in 6 days. Day 1, light. Day 2, sky. Day 3, land and sea. It's all very methodical. By day 6, humans are made, man and woman at the same time, and everything is smooth, structured, and precise. But then you hit Genesis 2, and suddenly it feels like we've switched movies. The vibe shifts. Now, God isn't just sitting up there commanding things into existence from a distance. He's down in the dirt, literally forming Adam from the ground. This time, woman doesn't show up until later, after Adam's been alone for a bit. And how does she get here? Not as an equal creation, but from Adam's rib. Why do these two stories exist side by side? You'd think if this was all divinely inspired, it would be a single, unified narrative, right? But no. Scholars have debated this for centuries. Some say it's just different perspectives. One is a wide-angle shot, and the other is more up-close and personal. But these aren't just two angles on the same story. They're fundamentally different. In Genesis 1, God is distant, an all-powerful being just speaking things into existence. In Genesis 2, he's more like a craftsman, shaping humans with his hands, and then deciding, oh wait, he needs a partner. The order is different, the style is different. It almost feels like two different authors telling separate stories. That's because Genesis wasn't written in one sitting. It's a mashup of different traditions stitched together over time. Some parts come from a priestly source focused on laws and rituals. That's where you get that structured 6-day creation. Others are more personal, human-centered narratives. That's where the Adam and Eve drama comes in. And get this, these two stories don't even agree on the order of creation. In Genesis 1, men and women are created simultaneously, equal from the start. But Genesis 2 has this whole Adam first, then Eve from a rib thing going on. That's a huge shift. The fact that these two accounts exist in the same holy book suggests that early Hebrew writers wanted to merge different ideas into one text, or that the Genesis we read today is a carefully curated remix of older stories. Maybe both versions are included because the people compiling these texts weren't trying to give one perfect narrative. They were giving their best shot at explaining something bigger than we can fully comprehend. Check this out. The first story doesn't even mention the Garden of Eden, the serpent, the tree, or the fall of man. That all comes in the second version. Suddenly, we're not just talking about creation anymore. We're talking about morality, temptation, and punishment. So is Genesis 2 a deeper reflection on human nature, while Genesis 1 is more like a cosmic blueprint? For centuries, people have blended these two stories into one, or chosen the version they like best. But if you read carefully, you can see the cracks. It's like a theological mashup. If Genesis has multiple versions of creation, what else have we overlooked? Now that these two different creation stories are fresh in your mind, let's take it a step further. Genesis wasn't even the first creation story in history. Far from it. Long before the Hebrew Bible was written, ancient civilizations were telling their own epic stories about how the universe began. Some of these stories are eerily similar to what you find in the Bible. Take the Enuma Elish from ancient Mesopotamia, dating back to around 1800 BC. Instead of a single calm God speaking the universe into existence, you've got a battle of gods. There's a cosmic chaos serpent named Tiamat, and the world is created out of her defeated body. It's all blood, war, and raw power as the building blocks of the universe. While not the same as Genesis, some elements, like the separation of waters and the emergence of land, are too close to ignore. Why does Genesis feel so similar to these earlier stories? Is it coincidence, or did the writers of Genesis borrow some ideas and give them a monotheistic twist? This is something scholars have debated for centuries. It gets better. The Egyptians had their own creation myths too, like the one where the god Adam rises from the primordial waters and starts creating the world. Again, we see the theme of creation emerging from watery chaos, darkness, and then boom, life appears. The Greeks also had a similar thing going on in their theogony, with Gaia and chaos. All these stories share common threads: primordial waters, gods or forces shaping the world, and chaos being tamed into order. Why are these ancient stories important for understanding Genesis? Because it shows that Genesis isn't radically new. It's part of a larger tradition of creation myths. While other stories involve multiple gods struggling for control, Genesis took a different approach. It streamlined the narrative. Instead of a pantheon at war, there's one God who speaks things into existence. No battle needed. This was a radical simplification that set the Hebrew narrative apart. This doesn't mean the writers of Genesis copied other myths word for word, but given the interconnected cultures of the ancient Near East, these ideas evolved together. When you realize this, Genesis stops being just a religious text and starts looking like a piece of an even bigger puzzle, a global story about humanity trying to figure out where it all began. But wait, there's more. Let's go deeper into even older stories. The Sumerians, one of the oldest known civilizations, had their own creation myths that might raise some seriously uncomfortable questions about the nature of human existence. In their stories, the gods, called the Anunnaki, didn't just create humans for some lofty spiritual purpose. According to Sumerian mythology, the Anunnaki created humans essentially as a workforce, laborers to do the hard tasks the gods didn't want to do themselves. They molded humans from clay and divine essence, which might sound familiar if you recall how Genesis describes God forming Adam from the dust of the ground. But in the Sumerian version, humans weren't made to rule the earth. They were created to serve the gods. Here's where things get wild. Some modern theorists, particularly those interested in ancient astronaut theories, suggest that the Anunnaki might not have been gods in the mythological sense, but extraterrestrials who came to Earth and genetically engineered humanity. If that sounds out there, consider the parallels. Both the Sumerian myths and the Genesis account talk about beings shaping humans from the earth, but in Sumerian mythology, humans are essentially slaves to the gods. What if the Genesis narrative is a cleaner, more human-friendly adaptation of a much older tradition? In Genesis, God gives humans dominion over the earth, a far more dignified role. What if that's a PR-friendly version of a darker origin story, one in which humans were created not to rule, but to serve? Remember, these Sumerian texts are thousands of years older than the biblical ones. If they influence the Bible, that might mean the original story was much less flattering to humanity. Now, let's take this a step further and revisit the Garden of Eden story, because there's a perspective on the serpent that might blow your mind. Traditionally, the serpent is Satan, tempting Eve and leading to sin. But what if the serpent is not the villain? In many ancient cultures, serpents symbolize wisdom and transformation. What if this is a story about liberation rather than disobedience? God places Adam and Eve in Eden, tells them not to eat from the tree of knowledge, and leaves the tree right there in plain sight. Why forbid them from gaining knowledge if he gave them free will? The serpent offers Eve something more than just temptation. He offers her a chance to see the world for what it truly is. Gnostic traditions, which challenged early Christian views, considered the serpent a liberator. They suggested that the God of Eden might have been a lesser deity trying to keep humanity ignorant and obedient. When Adam and Eve eat the fruit, they don't die as warned. Their eyes are opened. They understand right and wrong. They become fully human, capable of moral reasoning. Was this really a fall? Or was it the beginning of true freedom? If we tie this back to the Sumerian idea of humans created to serve, what if Eden was also a kind of controlled environment, and the forbidden fruit was the key to escaping it? The serpent's gift of knowledge might have been a step toward autonomy. Sure, Adam and Eve got kicked out, but maybe that was the price of freedom and real growth. Now, let's add another layer. Ancient Jewish mysticism, specifically the Kabbalah, introduces the idea that God didn't create the universe all alone. Creation was a collaborative process involving multiple aspects of the divine, called the Sephirot. Before anything physical could exist, God had to contract his infinite essence, the Ein Sof, to make space for the universe. Creation here wasn't a simple let there be light scenario. It was a complex, dynamic unfolding, almost like a cosmic experiment. In the Kabbalistic view, creation wasn't perfect or easy. There were tensions, with different aspects of the divine essence interacting to form reality. Some teachings even suggest that there were previous worlds that God tried to create before ours, worlds that couldn't hold together and shattered. The universe we live in is the successful attempt, though still imperfect, and humanity's role is to help fix what's broken, a concept called tikkun olam. This complicated view of creation dovetails nicely with the idea that humans were meant to grow, learn, and struggle with moral choices. It might explain why God would allow a serpent to introduce knowledge, why Eden wasn't a permanent paradise, and why we live in a world of complexity rather than a simple, finished product. But there's more. Let's introduce a figure who barely appears in mainstream versions of the Bible: Lilith. Jewish folklore and other ancient texts mention Lilith as Adam's first wife, created from the same clay as Adam, equal in every way. Unlike Eve, who comes from Adam's rib, Lilith refused to be subservient to Adam. She chose to leave, rejecting the entire system that placed her beneath him. Her story threatened the patriarchal structure so much that later traditions demonized her, painting her as a villain, a seducer, a dangerous force to be feared. If Lilith had stayed, if she and Adam had truly been equals, how different would humanity's story be? Lilith's erasure and replacement by Eve, created from Adam's body, more compliant, reflects a deliberate narrative choice. The message: defy the established order and you become the enemy. Her story was too dangerous, so it had to be buried. Now consider this. If God tried multiple times to create the universe, as Kabbalistic teachings suggest, and if Lilith's story was erased, if humans had to leave Eden to truly grow, then maybe the world we know isn't the first or final version of creation. Maybe it's one phase in an ongoing process. What does this mean for us today? Perhaps it means that our interpretations of these ancient texts should remain open. Instead of looking at Genesis as a single, perfect story with one correct meaning, we can see it as a conversation, a tapestry woven from many cultural, spiritual, and philosophical strands. Instead of viewing the world as a static artifact, we can embrace the idea that we're part of an ongoing creation, contributing to the universe's development with our choices and actions. So, what's next? Are we living in the final version of creation, or is there another chapter waiting to unfold? Since the ancient texts suggest that creation is dynamic, maybe humanity still has a role to play in shaping what comes after. Each interpretation, each act of understanding, each moral decision might be part of fine-tuning reality itself. As we wrap up this journey through the hidden layers of creation stories, from the familiar pages of Genesis to the distant echoes of Sumerian mythology, from the liberated serpent to the forgotten Lilith, from Gnostic and Kabbalistic mysteries to the concept of multiple failed worlds, we find that the tale is richer, deeper, and more complex than we ever imagined. Thank you so much for staying with me all the way through. I hope this exploration has opened your mind to new ideas, challenged your assumptions, and sparked your curiosity. If you enjoyed this, please drop a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss more deep dives like this. Your support helps the channel grow and keeps these discussions alive. May we continue to learn, question, and evolve, just as creation itself seems to do. And may God bless us all as we navigate these mysteries, daring to see beyond the simple stories we were once told.